Affairs, we extend a very warm welcome to all the participants joining us today for webinar on Sustainable Operations of MRFs. My name is Sukhpreet Kaur, Program Officer, Cities 2.0, and it is my privilege to serve as the moderator for today's session. Before we begin, let me briefly introduce the Cities 2.0 program under which this webinar is organized. City investments to innovate, integrate, and sustain 2.0 is a flagship urban development program of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, implemented in the partnership with French Development Agency, AFD, German Development Bank, and the European Union and NIUA. As part of its continued effort towards capacity building and knowledge dissemination, Cities 2.0 has organized this webinar on Sustainable Operations of MRFs. To formally inaugurate today's session, it is our honor to invite Dr. Debulina Kundu, Director, National Institute of Urban Affairs, to deliver the opening remarks. Dr. Kundu has over 3 decades of experience in urban development, governance, municipal finance, and inclusive urbanization. She has worked with several leading national and international organizations, including ADB, UNDP, KfW, GIZ, and the World Bank, and currently leads several strategic initiatives at NIUA supported by the Government of India and the international development partners. She also serves on various national and state level committees and has made significant academic contributions in the field of urban development. Respected ma'am, may I now request you to kindly deliver the opening remarks.
Namaskar. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, madam.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you. Namaskar, a very good morning to all of you. At the outset, I would like to warmly welcome all the distinguished participants joining us today. I thank the representatives from the Government of India, the state governments, the cities, the practitioners, researchers, development partners, and all stakeholders who are participating in this webinar on sustainable operations of material recovery facilities organized under the Cities 2.0 program. Your presence reflects the growing importance of strengthening resource recovery systems as an integral part of sustainable urban development. I think this year is particularly significant to NIUA as we celebrate our 50 years as a premier think tank under the aegis of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Government of India. And we have been working in the policies and research space as well as capacity building for sustainable urban development. Over the past 5 decades, NIUA has worked very closely with states, cities, academia, and civil society organizations to strengthen urban institutions through policy and practice. We have also tried to build capacities of local self-governments and also support evidence-based policy making. I think we all are aware of India's urban transition, and the consumption patterns are changing with economic growth, both again impacting the quantity and consumption of municipal solid waste, which are undergoing significant transformation. Cities are also expected not only to maintain cleaner environments, but also to improve resource efficiency, reduce dependence on landfill sites, and also contribute meaningfully to climate action. Building on the progress which we have achieved under the flagship Swachh Bharat mission, the focus is now shifting from waste collection and disposal to improving processing efficiencies, maximizing material recovery, and also adopting circular economy approaches across the entire waste value chain. I think this transition has been further reinforced through the recently notified Solid Waste Management Rules 2026, which came into effect from 1st April this year. I think it's very important for all of us working in this sector to be cognizant of the rules. And as you, those who have read the rules, I think you may be aware that it places greater emphasis on source segregation, resource recovery, scientific processing of municipal solid waste, accountability across the waste value chain, and circular economy principles. These also very much align with the tenets of the Cities 2.0 program, where we are also trying to look at circularity as one of the guiding principles. Uh, the rules also recognize MRFs as critical infrastructure for improving recovery efficiencies and reducing reliance on landfills. Consequently, strengthening the operational performance of MRFs has also become a key priority for cities and towns across the country. I believe just creating infrastructure is not enough. The long-term success of MRFs really depends on their efficient and sustainable operation, which includes ensuring a highly efficient segregation, maintaining equipments, establishing efficient sorting and storage systems, safeguarding the health and safety of workers. I think that's very important. Developing reliable market linkages for recovered materials, efficient material linkages for offtake, and also ensuring the financial sustainability of operations. Addressing these challenges requires just, I think, more than infrastructural investments. It calls for stronger institutional capacities, effective operational planning and monitoring, skilled human resources, appropriate contractual arrangements, continuous and rigorous monitoring, and sustained capacity building across all levels of governance. Importantly, strengthening MRF operations is not merely about improving waste processing efficiencies. It is about advancing the broader vision of circular economy by recovering and conserving resources, reducing environmental pollution, creating green livelihoods, and enhancing overall sustainability and resilience of our cities. Uh, One point I would like to make here is that we also need to think about the peri-urban areas, because if we just restrict our focus only to the municipal boundaries, I think it is important also to take into account the peripheral, the transitional or pre-urban areas, because a lot of negative externalities from the cities we try to dump to the neighboring areas beyond the municipal limits. So while we are talking about circularity, I think it's important also to take into cognizance this entire region. And in this context, I think today's webinar has been designed to provide practical insights into the sustainable planning and operation of MRFs. And I encourage all the participants who are present here to actively engage in the discussions, to ask questions, and also share their own experience, because I believe peer learning remains one of the most effective tools to strengthen and implementation across cities. And I am also very confident that today's deliberations will provide valuable operational insights and contribute towards strengthening the material recovery facility operations across Indian cities. At NIUA, we remain committed to supporting these efforts through technical assistance, knowledge management, and capacity building initiatives that enable cities to implement practical and scalable solutions. I also take this opportunity to thank our program partners, the French development agencies, the KfW, and the European Union for the partnership with the Government of India for the cities program. And I really look forward to this webinar. And with these words, I once again welcome all of you and wish you a very engaging and productive learning session. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your inspiring and insightful address. Your remarks have aptly highlighted the importance of strengthening MRFs as a key pillar of India's transition towards a circular economy. We can now move to the technical session of today's webinar. It is my pleasure to invite our distinguished resource person, Mr. Pradeep Dadlani. Mr. Dadlani has over 3 decades of experience in the sustainability sector. He has made significant contributions to plastic waste management in India, including the design and development of demonstration MRFs in multiple cities. He currently serves as a domestic expert for 2 cities under the Cities 2.0 program and supporting the cities in advancing circular economy initiatives and integrated waste management. We are delighted to have him with us today to share his expertise. Today's session will focus on sustainable planning and operations of MRF, followed by an interactive question and answer session. Participants are requested to post their questions in the chat box along with the name and city. Mr. Dadlani, the floor is now yours, sir.
Thank you, Supreet. I would like to thank NIUA for this opportunity. Been working as a domestic expert on this program, Cities 2.0, for almost 1.5 years now. And there has been knowledge, learning, sharing, and it's a journey which we started about, I think, 1.5 years ago. And now new domestic experts are also joining, and a lot of experience sharing would happen. And also on this MRF thing, especially, I would say there's a lot to learn from each other, as Madam Debulina Kundu also pointed out. All the participants should contribute to this. I believe there is we have a mix of academicians, practitioners, city managers, from all over, environmental specialists who are joining us today. So I'll just start with my presentation, and towards the end we can have a Q&A session, and we'll try to answer all the queries which are being raised. Yeah. Just give me a minute to set it up. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is all about, as Madam also pointed out, we are trying to discuss the sustainable operations of material recovery facility, which has gained immense importance. मैं थोड़ा बहुत बीच में हिंदी में भी बोलूंगा, बोलचाल की भाषा, जैसे हम normally we converse in 2 different languages, and so that everybody can understand. But some technical words obviously would come in English, and in the normal flow. So basically, it has assumed greater significance in view of the recent SWM rules 2026, which have been implemented with effect from April 1st this year. So we'll also discuss the the I'll just give you the brief flow of the presentation, and then we'll go slide by slide. Basically, we'll discuss what is the MRF, what is its role in integrated solid waste management, how the new rules defined or enhance the value of MRF in the present context, and the 6 pillars of MRF's sustainability. So these are all very important matters. So we have seen MRFs coming up, and we keep reading some stories about some successes and many failures. So our uh, output should be to uh, increase the success rate, and how we can do it by following some basic rules, by taking some measures which the regulatory compliance would also help in achieving, especially the present one. So what is the MRF? So I'll first read out the definition as per SBM, Swachh Bharat Mission. A place where waste collected from the doorstep in a segregated manner is further segregated and various components of recyclable waste removed from it for recycling or resale. So that's very, critical that the segregated waste which comes as an input to the MRF is further segregated and there is a value enhancement. What is it? So it's an infrastructure. As Madam also pointed out, Madam Devolina Kundu, it's an infrastructure. So our objective should not just be building the infrastructure, but how to look at the aspects like sustainability, the linkages, the social aspects, environmental aspects, the safety, capacity building, etc. So MRF is an infrastructure to receive, sort, process, and laying emphasis on each of these words. Receive, sort, process, store recyclable, non-recyclable RDF and inert materials with the aim to maximize the quantity of recyclables processed. So there has been cases where, MRFs have failed. I'm acting like a devil's advocate here, but because the level of segregation was very low. And that is one major issue in this. But with the new rules coming in, there will be increased responsibility on the ULBs, the bulk waste generators. I'll be discussing that also. Hopefully, now we'll move towards an era where the MRFs are sustainable from all angles, including the economic viability. So it produces materials which will generate the highest possible revenues in the market. That is the target, and maximize the reuse of other segregated fractions in different processes and industries. How is it operated? What is the business model? So there are different business models. It could be a local body or any other entity in Rule 2 of the Solid Waste Management Rules, or any person or agency authorized by them. So this is what an MRF is. Where does it stand in the waste value chain? So once there's a waste generator, then the doorstep waste collectors. Thereafter, the major processes, the rag pickers indulge in segregation, itinerant buyers are there, scrap dealers, kabadi walas होते हैं, छोटे aggregators होते हैं, बड़े aggregators, recyclers. MRF, it is at the center stage of all this. So it plays a very important role as far as the dry waste is concerned. Yeah. So continuing with the same theme, we have the upstream and the downstream. MRF is in the center stage. So upstream would mean basically the waste generation, primary collection, transfer and transport to the MRF. The core theme MRF, what all happens here? Basically, there is receipt of the material, the waste material, its inspection, pre-sorting, rejects removal. There's mechanical sorting or manual sorting, which is carried out at the MRF, and there are various methods. So MRF capacities could vary from 1 to 2 tons per day to, we have had, 100 tons per day plus projects also. Even in cities 2.0, there are many MRFs coming up with the capacity of 50, 75, 100 tons. So that's a good way, to really address this issue of plastic waste and other dry waste. So what all there are magnetic separation for the ferrous metals, for non-ferrous metals, eddy current separation, glass separation. So you have glass mills, which can be deployed, and optical sorting. So plastics are sorted through the optical method by the resins. There is a baling and storage of recovered materials, and some of these residual streams, which are not non-recyclable, they go as rejects to RDF or landfill, or even it could even end up in the road construction, for example, especially the MLPs and all, which can be used as a. I was in Bangalore recently, 3 days back. We visited a plant which is, the MLPs are being, and the residual stream is being converted to as a asphalt substitute and it reduces the value, quantum of bitumen, and so it enhances the value of the quality of the road, and also at a more economical cost. So all these aspects, but presently mostly it is used as a refuse derived fuel. Downstream, if we come to, it will basically the recyclers, processors of paper, plastic, metal, and glass, the end markets, what we call as the forward linkages. So, as Madam had mentioned, the backward linkages, the upstream, and the downstream, the forward linkages, they are very important apart from the basic process or the equipment or the equipment or the facility or the infrastructure you are having as a MRF. So these are also critical. We'll be examining these as we go along. And yeah, significance of MRF in resource recovery. So we all know, we just tried to put it down, in terms of what are the major advantages of having a MRF in the overall RE thing, the resource efficiency and recovery. It promotes circular economy, basically through reuse and recycling of the materials, and reducing dependence on virgin resources, conserve natural resources like timber, minerals, and petroleum as an alternate recyclable material which is used in its place, reduces environmental impact due to minimizing the landfill use, greenhouse gas emissions, and pollution. Economic benefits. This is very critical in a country where we have this issue of employment opportunities, lack of employment opportunities in some socioeconomic pockets. So this is really beneficial, and I've seen people from the lower socioeconomic strata, they earning a decent amount through this, engaging in this activity, either as a waste collector or as a worker at MRF or a recycling facility, or working then later on they've started their own agency, or a cooperative to recycle or work on a MRF on their own as a team. This has happened in Kochi and many other places. Improve waste management efficiency, enhance the quality and quantity of recyclable materials available for the recycling industries. All the recycling industries look for recyclable material. There has been talk about the changes in the regulations to allow some percentage of recycled material in the as a raw material, 15 to 20%. So I've seen personally in Malegaon, one of the largest plastic recycling cluster, the MLP waste is being used in manufacture of pipes, about 15 to 20%, without affecting the quality or the life of those pipes. I'm just giving one example here, and it's all linked to the resource recovery significance of MRF. So what is the action plan needed? A lot of ULB practitioners and managers, I'm sure, are there in the audience. So what is the action plan at the ULB level to integrate MRFs into the integrated solid waste management plan? So this basically comprises, as we all know, ISWM plan starts with the door-to-door waste collection strategy, primary collection, community engagement and awareness. There are IEC budgets in all, even in SPM 2.0, they are provided to ULB. So to create engagement and awareness and sensitize the public about this, plan for collection and transportation of domestic sanitary waste, plan for transportation of segregated waste to MRF. So this is a critical chain in the overall scheme of things for ISWM. And thereafter, enforcement of health and safety plan for waste pickers, training and capacity building, as was also pointed out earlier, that this is also critical of the ULB officials, enforcement of user fees and penalty. Each city has a mechanism for user fees and penalty, but which is not properly implemented. But in the ISWM plan, this has to be worked out properly, and especially in the context of the new rules ये सारा जो है चीजें अब अप्लाई होनी शुरू हो जाएंगी होपफुली, and this would also add value to a MRF, its significance, and also the operational efficiency and the overall viability. Develop the ULB level bylaws for solid waste management and plastic waste management, legacy waste management plan at the ULB level. This also is taking a major, I would say, there have been a sea change in this over the past few years, and especially with the new rules coming in. I'll also link it up with how MRFs would play a more significant role with the new rules which have come about in SWM 2026. Plan, design, and implement an SLF in compliance with rules, sanitary landfills facility, and documentation of waste collected process. So documentation remains a very critical and important ingredient of this MRF operations. हम कई बारी अच्छा काम करते हैं, उसको हम डॉक्यूमेंट नहीं करते हैं बेसिकली। वो हमने कई जगह ऑब्जर्व भी किया। MRF ऑपरेट कर रहा है, प्रॉफिटेबल भी है, बट डॉक्यूमेंट्स मिसिंग हैं। उनके पास कितना करते हैं, किस टाइप का प्लास्टिक प्रोसेस किया जाता है, आगे किसके पास जाता है, रिसाइकल होता है, एग्रीगेटर के पास जाता है। तो ये सब चीजें with hopefully with the new rules coming in, this would become the norm of the day rather than a choice for the MRF operator. Yeah, so this is important. Is also earlier pointed out that in view of the new solid waste management rules 2026, what does it mean for MRF? So what a few things have changed. We all know those things, but I'm just trying to recollect those, for the sake of everybody. 4 stream segregation of solid waste at source. It has been made mandatory. So what are these 4 streams? The wet waste, kitchen waste, vegetable waste, fruit peels, meat, flowers, etc. We know what all it contains. What are the various fractions of this? Dry waste, plastic, paper, metal, glass, wood, rubber, etc. And this is what is to be sent to MRS for sorting and recycling. And then we have categories like sanitary waste and special care waste. So this have to be, there would be a separate waste collection mechanism for sanitary waste and special care waste. But if you see the middle line, the marked in red, the dry waste, that is linked to MRFs, basically. So how will it affect MRF operations? The segregated dry waste sent to MRFs for further sorting and recycling, ensuring cleaner input stream to the MRF and reduce contamination. So this is what is the ask or the requirement or what is being made mandatory for the dry waste under the new rules. And still continuing with the same theme. So what are the duties of the local bodies, the urban local bodies, be it municipal council or NAC or the municipal corporation? We have 3-tier system. Even gram panchayats have to follow this. And also, as Madam mentioned, peri-urban areas, it's very important because there could be some MRFs with a smaller capacity, 2 tons to 5 tons, which may do the required, we can do the needful for the, especially for the peri-urban areas, the satellite towns. Fortunately, we worked in some very small towns which are not peri-urban, but the capacities or the tonnage of waste is probably equivalent to a small satellite, township or a peri-urban area. Port Blair being one example. So, what are the duties? Local bodies under the revised rules, the new rules. Local bodies are responsible for the collection, segregation, and transportation of solid waste. So this is the responsibility of the local bodies. They can do it on their own or engage a private agency through a contract, basically, and MRFs. So they have been formally recognized as facilities for sorting of solid waste, especially the dry waste. So this is a kind of a shift in the under the new rules, which leads to more important MRFs gaining more importance And also the regulatory framework has been provided for its more efficient operations, maybe possibly, more viable, greater viability and sustainability. That is what we have to strive for in all our planning and designing, planning, implementation, monitoring, etc., all the activities. How will it affect MRF operations? The efficiency of MRFs increases with pre-sorted input streams, we all know, as it eliminates the need for extensive on-site segregation. So that is one. So the more segregated, better segregated waste comes to an MRF, it eliminates or reduces the need for extensive on-site segregation. We have seen MRFs struggling with this actually. Though it is supposed to be a segregated waste coming to the MRF, but due to some laxity on part of the ULBs or the collection agency, it doesn't happen. So still some mixed waste comes. So the overall, you see the overall reflection in terms of the rejects, which are generated, the RDF generated, etc., is very high in some of this, because the sorting, the segregation is not done at the collection stage. Additionally, the formal recognition of MRFs clarifies its specific function within the waste management hierarchy. अब MRF को एक ओहदा दे दिया गया है जिससे उनका सिग्निफिकेंस बढ़ गया है और उसका इम्पैक्ट हमें आते दिनों में दिखेगा. दैट इज वेरी क्रिटिकल. Still continuing with the same theme, what it means for MRF, the new rules. So there is a restriction on landfilling and remediation of legacy waste dump sites. So there is higher landfilling fees to be paid by the ULBs for unsegregated waste. Restrictions on landfilling and limits landfilling to only certain types of waste that has been mandated under the new rules. This is again a game changer because the ULBs also have to ensure that the unsegregated waste and the unwanted waste is not dumped into the landfills, because landfills is another area, another major problem area. So the very fact that the new rules, the compliance of these new rules, should ensure that this landfilling waste mechanism is also changes, and it would lead to more advantageous position for the MRF. Annual audits of landfills to be carried out by state pollution control boards. This is important. SPCB या regional offices जो होंगे उनके वो वहाँ पे annual audits करेंगे कि लैंडफिल में कोई ऐसा मटेरियल तो नहीं डंप हो रहा जो रेगुलेशन के अगेंस्ट है, न्यू रूल्स के अगेंस्ट है. तो इससे अपने आप एक 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 चेंज आएगा कि सब अपना जो एमआरएफ के पास पहुंचना चाहिए वो वहां पे जाएगा, और जो लैंडफिल में जाना चाहिए उधर जाएगा, और जो कंपोस्टिंग के लिए जो मटेरियल है वो वहां पे इट विल बी बेसिकली सेंट टू फॉर द कंपोस्टिंग or any other for recycling or the processing facilities. Mandated mapping and assessment of legacy waste dump sites. So we have had this even earlier. There was some rupees 555 per ton was the rate it was being provided to a ULB for the biomining and bioremediation of the legacy waste. But now there would be a mandated mapping and monitoring, so which would ensure that the gain is all MRFs actually in some ways. So that is important, and also less land is consumed, which is it's a major issue in most of the cities. How will it affect MRF operations? With the stricter restrictions, the local bodies have to divert the dry or recyclable waste to MRFs. अभी टेंडेंसी होती है कि सब मिक्स वेस्ट है तो सबसे इजी है कि उसको डंप साइट में लैंडफिल में डाल दिया जाए. This would stop to a very large extent because of the audits, the penalties, and the monitoring. So this would lead to a better segregation, more segregated waste reaching the MRF, which should increase the efficiency and the sustainability of the MRFs in the times to come. So types of waste that can be landfill are very few actually. But we have seen, we have all visited the landfill sites all over the country. Most of us have some experience on this. So only the non-recyclable waste, non-energy recoverable waste, and the pure inert materials. And the target is to move towards zero waste. And in the first year also, the target is it should be less than 20% of the waste generated. So this is how we are moving towards an era where more sorted, segregated material would come to MRF. This is an important subject. That's why I'm, dwelling on this in more detail. The how solid waste management rules 2026 is a game changer for MRF. So it also defines, it brings in the role, responsibilities, and accountabilities of the bulk waste generators. So bulk waste generators earlier were defined as any entity generating more than 100 kgs per day. But now it has been made clear that any infrastructure or facility having a floor area of 20,000 square meters, 5 acres or more, or which is consuming water 40,000 liters per day or more, or solid waste generation of more than 100 kgs per day. So it could be a hotel, large restaurants, or a gated complex, residential complex, educational institute, multiplexes, etc. And it has been very elaborately defined under the new rules. It gives an opportunity. So it is an opportunity for MRF because the extended bulk waste generator responsibility under the new rules mandates them. I mean, it makes them accountable, and they have to account for their own waste, providing opportunities for collaboration with MRFs. So that means more input, more segregated waste for the MRFs, and better economies of scale of operation. So this all augurs well for the MRFs in the coming years. Sustainability, that is the theme we are all working on, the main theme of today's presentation or the webinar. So there are 6 pillars. We all talk about sustainability in daily operations, whatever we do. So what are the 6 pillars of MRF operations? One is compliance with standards and laws. Backward linkages, these are very easy to understand, so I'm not really elaborating. Material कहाँ से आ रहा है, कौन सा मटेरियल आ रहा है, बैकवर्ड लिंकेजेस कहाँ पे जा रहा है, फॉरवर्ड लिंकेजेस, markets and end users, financial viability for any entity. At the end of the day, financial viability is also important. So we'll be looking at the costing and the operational costs. What are the indicators? Could be break-even point. It could be debt service coverage ratio. It could be internal rate of return or NPV. So some of us, I'm sure anybody who's planning a MRF or works, these are very important parameters. And there could be gaps. As a pure environmentalist, I may not understand the financial viability so much, but it's a team effort. So you sit down with your team, look at also somebody who understands the financial aspects better. उनके साथ बैठ के काम कीजिए. Similarly, operational health and safety, ये भी बहुत important parameter है. And we should not forget, last but not the least, livelihood and social aspects. We know the women workers, they I've seen. Yeah. So the women workers play a very important role. I've seen at least 40 to 50%, being women and working in the different MRFs. So that also would be covered. So the pillar 1 is the regulatory framework driving compliance. And this is, so we have 4-stream waste segregation, which we just discussed, defined duties of local bodies um, and MRFs. This also we discussed, extended bulk waste generator responsibility and restrictions on landfill. These are the background, you can say, regulatory aspects which would drive the MRFs. Design criteria, I won't get into the details. This is basically taken from the Swachh Bharat Mission Advisory on MRFs or MSW. So there are different aspects. You can plan a MRF from 1 to 2 tons or 10 tons, and 1 to 5 tons to 100, 200, 300 tons. In India, being a vast country with different urban centers having varied population, so this is just an indicative thing. It's all available on the net. I'm not getting into the details, but there is a kind of advice, or technical guidance available from the SPM. Principles for designing the layout of MRF. So this still be continuing the with the pillar one, compliance with standards and laws. So the safety is important, and it should be designed for peak hour and peak capacity requirement. Because when the material comes in, the storage space requirement, the storage for the finished material or the recycled or the, and the rejects, etc., all this we have to plan for the peak time. Storage capacity should be designed for double or more. If you are expecting average 4 TPD, you should plan for maybe 10 TPD MRF. Also in view of the increasing population, changing, consumption norms, etc. Vehicles approaching and leaving the MRF facility, sufficient space should be there for tipping the waste. This is important. Movement and transfer of waste. Areas for office space, basic utilities for changing room, washroom for males and females. This is important. At one place, we even suggested a crèche for women, because they have sometimes young kids, infants. They used to come with the infants. So this was suggested and it was being implemented in at least in one of the MRFs. So these are again some innovative things which we need to look into while designing the layout itself. And there are the use cargo containers which can be used for the office, for having washrooms, changing rooms, etc. That could be just outside the MRF. So why we know that up to 5 TPD, the regulatory requirements are very, very low, and these are all mentioned here. The moment we get into the larger, I won't say larger, but let's say medium size and the large sized MRFs, then there are obviously some requirements which are to be complied with, and this would include host of things. And this is all again available, but I'm just to drive home the point that it may be a good idea to have decentralized MRFs zone wise, for example. This is what we have proposed in some cities, rather than having a one large MRF, which you have economies of scale, but then there is also problem of larger, cost, transportation costs, more segregation required, and more compliance requirements. So it may be a good idea. Each city can plan on its own, or what works for them basically. Pillar two is the backward linkages. So MRF stage. So we discussed this, the upstream and the downstream. So which are the core processing hub, MRF. So basically MRF adds value by converting mixed recyclable waste into clean, marketable material streams. Continuing with the same pillar two, how to set up an MRF, finalizing the capacity of the MRF. So understanding the regulatory institutional framework of that region or that ULB or the state. There have been states where the bill-less system is followed, for example. It could change, the plan for proposing a MRF, for example. It could be one of the decision processes or indicators. Selection of wards and land identification. Land remains a major issue in most of the cases, but there is also the good point is the enough land available with typically a ULB, because this doesn't require too much land, unlike a large processing facility. Population forecasting for selected wards up to design year. Waste flow analysis, characterization. Waste reception and input handling. This is important because the collection and delivery is when it is drop off point at the MRF, when it is delivered there. This is the first physical link in the backward material chain. Weighing in is very important. Sometimes we have observed the quantification and the weighing is not done properly. So they are happy with the material being received and they just load it onto the conveyor belt, for example, if it is a mechanized kind of a sorting. Initial inspection. So this is very critical. There has to be a protocol for this, which has to be developed. This is very important. And also protect downstream sorting operations and worker safety. Reception area management. Waste is placed in a dedicated reception zone to prevent scattering, while pre-sorted material is stored separately. So the entire area has to be worked out in a neat and clean manner. And there are, again, I'm not getting into the details. There are directives, guidelines available on this and how this can be made, done in a very sanitized manner, basically. And the safe storage, safety compliance, usage of PPE, clean and litter-free, all these aspects we are all aware of this. Sorting the incoming waste stream. So there, we have this typically conveyor belt loading, manual identification and sorting, bin management. So this is important. So what kind of bins or the packaging materials, what kind of packs you would like to have, and segregation and aggregation. So there has to be a system for storing high value recyclables, safe storage of hazardous material, which is segregated, storage of rejects and residual material, and general storage guidelines. So these are all, have to be properly worked out. Again, I'm not getting into the details because this has to be worked out for an individual MRF. There is a lot of literature available, a lot of case studies. We are not getting into that. So forward linkages. So baling and packaging. Baling is one important thing which almost all the MRFs have, even if they don't have other, equipment, for example. But baling is one thing which is, so basically here the input is the residual dry waste in plastic bottles, rigid plastic, plastic films, etc. Output is dense bales of waste. Typically, these should be 30 to 60 kg per bale, but I've seen in Kochi 120 kg, the bales weighing 120, 90 to 120 kg also. But ideally, in a vertical baler, we all, try to have about 50 to 60 kg bales. So bales are then low because it's easier to load and transport them to either to the cement mills or for recycling facilities. So we worked on a project in Nepal on the recycling of the PET bottles, which are all coming to India to the plant called Ganesha Ecosphere. And this was before the new rules in 2016. So this is how, even after traversing large distance, it was profitable for the billing person there and also for the unit in India. So just to give you an example. Processing plastics for market ready output. So this is again, there are different equipment, so we have this fatka machines which basically separate the high density and the low density material. Plastic shredders, PET, HDP, LDP, shredding. Aglo machines, basic exam thing is granulate the soft low grade shredded plastics into fine denser pieces suitable for feeding into the extruder. And gatta machines is basically melts pre-processed and aglo-plastics into ingots or pellets. Oh, this is the final market ready output, and it can either be sent to the recyclers and processors. There are jumbo sacks which can be stored in that and transported. And in addition to this, there could be glass shredders or glass hammer mills for coconut recycling units also, though it is a biodegradable, but sometimes it gets in port player the coconuts, there's a separate equipment put for the coconuts also. Market linkages and buyers. So aggregators, basically, they purchase in bulk, and multiple MRFs they would purchase the material. Recyclers and processors, this is very important because I worked in a cluster which is probably the biggest cluster of plastic recycling in the country, called Malegaon, 90 kilometers from Nasik. So this MRF linkages, the forward linkages with the recyclers processors is also very critical. With the cement plants, each MRF starts looking for linkage, even those which are not performing so well or which are not able to have high value, which are not getting the high value plastics as an input. They also, for them, cement plants remains one major source. And we worked in Kanpur, where the material was going all the way to Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh, the RDF from there, from the MRF. Waste to energy and thermal power plants. Again, this is important. Road construction and other industries. So this is additional thing. And as I mentioned earlier, in Bengaluru, we visited one plant just 3-4 days back, where they are creating this material which they have an ongoing contract with BBMB, the ULB there, and they are supplying this for the road construction, and at a fairly good price, 22 to 23 rupees per kg. Revenue generation and business models. Again, this we have included as part of forward linkages. So sale of recyclables, of course, that is the major source of revenue. RDF sales and tipping fees. You normally actually don't generate too much revenue, but still in some cases they pay you some tipping fees, 1 rupee to 1 rupee 50 paisa per kg. There are grant subsidies and recoveries. So because this is an important part of the entire scheme of things, the overall integrated solid waste management, there are grant subsidies and funding available. And operating models also, depending on how it is shared, the land belongs to whom and who's the operator. So there are different models, business models, which could shape the revenue sharing also. Standard operation. So I'm just giving an example of a demonstration MRF at Port Blair. And this was one of the good MRFs, which was was implemented in 2024-25. It was inaugurated formally with training and all that. So the goals were operational efficiency, safety, compliance, then safety of the workers, again the compliance with the regulatory requirements and best practices. So this is part of this is a pillar 4, operational health and safety. So we are looking at we have this operational health and safety management plans, there are IFC guidelines, World Bank guidelines. But at the smaller level, the ULBs, the state government, there is enough guidelines available to adhere to those basically and follow those. So this is again the basic. I'm just acknowledging this from a demonstration project at Port Pier. So what are the safety measures? The PPE, the machine safety is important. Quality control measures, the inspection, documentation. That's very important, as I mentioned earlier. How to identify and remove the hazardous waste. This is again very critical, especially these are the hazardous materials. So the workers have to be trained on this and how to segregate the hazardous waste materials and how to store it and which agency it has to be sent to. What is the mechanism? That also is very important. How the removal and storage and the disposal part is. Temporary storage of sorted materials. So this would obviously, as I mentioned, high value recyclables, hazardous materials, and the rejects and residual materials. These are the 3 critical types of the sorted materials for which provision has to be made for the storage. How to set up an MRF. So this is the part of the environmental and social aspects. Environmental aspects would include the site selection, design, operational considerations or conditions, community safety and health consideration. Social and gender, as the moment the capacity of the unit goes beyond 5 TPD, there has to be a further compliance with the State Pollution Control Board as per the. So this is one aspect which has to be kept in mind. Social and gender aspects. Again, all the relevant state government or the ULB guidelines have to be followed for the welfare of the workers and also the best practices. Again, this is taken from typically a unit, actual unit, just to give you an idea. So you'll see mostly it is the semi-skilled and unskilled workers. And unskilled workers are basically the ones who are basically doing the sorting. Even if it's being done on a conveyor, they are actually, they are the ones who are doing the segregation, so to say. The operational part is not so, I would say, labor intensive. So in any MRF, you'll see the unskilled or semi-skilled workers would be playing a major role. Training and capacity building, pillar 5, again, this is the SOP. You have to prepare standard operating procedures for a MRF. It would be not just a very standardized thing document, but it is relevant, specific to that particular unit. That is important. Though it is called SOP, safety training of all the stakeholders, technical training, especially for the equipment and and all the equipment and the other auxiliary equipment. All this has to be worked out. Business training, because this is important. If we just keep on operating a MRF and it is not to a private agency, it's a PPP model. They are not really benefiting. Then they lose interest. So business training also in terms of how to have better backward linkages, forward linkages, maybe get into some value-added products, and generate maximum possible revenue for the MRF. Community engagement and livelihood integration. So informal sector integration, it's very important. Similar is the itinerant buyer and the doorstep waste collectors. So these basically MRF should strive to get them integrated. They are the key actors for them or key stakeholders. Community engagement and awareness. So we have seen this working, effectively. If we engage the community, they have been cleaning drives on the port, and the plastic covered, collected from that was linked to a MRF. They were able to get the dry segregated plastic material was sent to a existing MRF, or so it basically at a low cost they could get the required plastic waste. So and also the community engagement, especially in view of the new rules, becomes important because they should know how to segregate and what would go to a MRF eventually. So all these aspects, health and safety for waste, because this is first and foremost, requirement. So, and capacity building for ULB officers. So it's not just the workers who are there, but also the ULB officials, starting from the executive engineer, the supervisors, the sanitation inspectors. So they should realize the significance of the MRF, how it operates, what kind of input material is required for a MRF to operate effectively. All these aspects. ये बहुत important है, सारे aspects. प्रोजेक्ट कॉस्ट, अगेन मैं इसमें डिटेल में नहीं जाऊंगा. वी नो व्हाट इज द कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर, लैंड एक्विजिशन एंड डेवलपमेंट. मेनी केसेस द यूएलबी टेक्स द इनिशिएटिव. They do, land is acquired and developed by them. In some cases even the sheds are constructed, and then in third case there is also the equipment which is they install, they buy the equipment, and then they have the agency, basically an operating agency, because the capex requirement for an agency, a small agency, may be little higher than what a ULB can afford. So that's why ULB takes the lead most of the cases, but there are different models. Then obviously the cost of vehicles deployed for carriage of waste, consulting services, and I'll come to how the project cost and the scheme of finance. I'll be also sharing this data. ऑपरेशनल एक्सपेंडिचर, जो आपका रोज का खर्चा होता है, सैलरी क्या दे रहे हैं आप, पीपीई किट्स दे रहे हैं, इलेक्ट्रिसिटी कॉस्ट, यूटिलिटीज, अदर यूटिलिटीज, वाटर, सीवरेज बिल्स, मेंटेनेंस वर्क्स, पीरियोडिक लाइसेंसिंग एंड परमिट्स, रिप्लेसमेंट एसेट वैल्यू, कुछ मशीन्स का रिप्लेसमेंट होना होता है, मेंटेनेंस, डेप्रिसिएशन, वेदर यू फॉलो, सॉरी, SLM method or written down value method depreciation. So there is a depreciation of any equipment, any asset which you consume or which you use. Then there is some Mr. Ganesh Singh. Please come in, Mr. Ganesh Singh. Or let me finish this. You can.
Sir, we'll have the Q&A session at the end.
Yeah, we have.
You may please proceed.
So I'll just try to finish it soon, and then we can have a proper revenue model. Apart from the revenue from the material, we have grants, RDF, tipping fees, and there could be other, revenue streams also. Potential market linkages, as I mentioned, aggregators, cement plants, waste to energy plants, thermal power plants, road construction, etc. This is typically again an actual cost, project cost. So for those who, I'm just trying to explain one or two terms we all understand: land, building, since it was provided for by the ULB. It's not mentioned here, but this can be significant. But purely in terms of plant and machinery, miscellaneous fixed assets, amortization, of the pre-operative and preliminary expenses. So this is also included in a project cost, especially if you're going to a bank, and some agencies may borrow some loans, for example. For them, it's important to list it down properly. There will be contingencies you have to provide for 5 to 10%. Margin money for working capital. This is different from working capital. For that, you require a margin money which you have to shell out. The agency, the operator. So this all adds up to the project cost. Working capital is different. So normally you have two types of loans. The term loan, which is the longer duration loan, where you are basically, you're taking it against the assets. And the working capital is towards your inventory of the materials, the manpower. Your 3 months working capital is the norm. But you have to provide for the margin money for that working capital in the project costs. Just to make it a little clear, how a project cost, if you go to a bank, is calculated. There could be a grant. In this case, there was a grant, and the how much the ULB or some other agency is contributing. This is a means of finance. So here there was a grant of this, and the ULB operator was contributing 19.7. So this is CapEx and OpEx, as in short form we call capital expenditure, operational expenditure. What are the key points? How will you work out the financial viability? We all know there are various, we all read about the break-even points, the net present value, the internal rate of return, debt service coverage ratio. These are the important, again, I won't get into the detail, but idea ये है कि आपका ब्रेक इवन पॉइंट कम से कम हो, आपका जो ऑपरेशनल पैरामीटर्स हैं तो उसमें आप 10 साल की प्रोजेक्शन देते हैं। अगर आप बैंक के पास जाते हैं तो उसमें कैसे वो एबिटा क्या आता है, तो मैं थोड़ा टेक्निकल टर्म्स कम यूज करके बेसिकली टू इंश्योर दैट द प्रोजेक्ट इज सस्टेनेबल फ्रॉम फाइनेंशियल पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू ऑल्सो। This is the sixth pillar, financial viability, which we are discussing. So this is how it was, there's a 5 TPD plant, sales turnover, annual wages and salary bills. Break-even point, even in third year, was 94%. This is as per the DPR prepared. I'm just acknowledging this. It was part of the GIZ CCPMA project where we had worked, but this was the actual, thing. But this is just to understand. It may vary, it may not. It's just initial, estimate of how your financial projections would look like for your break-even point or the, debt service coverage ratio or internal rate of return. I'm not getting into the details, but these are the important parameters. As I mentioned earlier, at the end of it, we have to make it financially sound venture also. And especially when the ULBs are all looking for PPPs, public-private partnerships. The private operator won't, ULB probably can get support from the state government or somebody, but the private operator, if I get into venture into this, I'll definitely like to make it a profitable venture. So that is why this is important. So what are the key takeaways? Compliance with standards and laws, very important. backward linkages, reliable input collection, weighing, sorting, protocols, forward linkages, market and end users, strong buyer relationships and diversified market linkages, financial viability. We tend to forget this because, but if we get private operators into the play, which is happening, financial viability is also going to be a very important part of the sustainability, overall sustainability. Operational health and safety, this is also very critical. We should not forget the role being played by the waste workers or the workers who are operating the MRF. This is a matter of high concern, and even from the environmental social safeguards point of view, this is very critical. So this also should be given top priority. Livelihood and social aspects also, because we should create more sustainable livelihoods, having good, reasonable working hours for them, having, the community level development also to some extent, and it should be socially sustainable. What are the challenges we face? We face challenges all the time. Low level of segregated driveways. We have seen, MRFs operating suppose the input is 10 TPD, the final saleable product is 2.5 TPD. That kind of, and again, I'm telling you from, because the segregation was not proper. What we should strive for to have increase this level to 60 to 70% at least. Hopefully, with the new rules coming in, more compliance, better monitoring, this should happen. And this cities 2.0, at least in these 18 cities, they are going to play a very important role as far as the MRF operations are concerned. SLRMs, I've used this word, these are basically a kind of MRF only. So these are underutilized and under supervised. So this is also one area of concern. Stream-wise collection is not practiced. So the commercial waste, from the let's say from the hotels and all, is not directed to the MRFs. And now with this bulk waste generators, definition and their mechanism, this would ensure that this at least gets sorted or rectified to a large extent. Limited waste processing, limited categories of waste being processed in MRFs. Poor supervision because of lack of capacity building, training, and also it's a fact that mostly it is the informal, rag pickers who form a kind of a cooperative to take on, the larger players are not there in the smaller MRFs. So the agencies who bid also, they're typically for 5 tons, 10 tons per day projects, they are typically small, so they don't have the capacity, the technical know-how, etc. So this and supervision also suffers because of that. Weak market link. Again, this is the biggest challenge. The aggregators, the recyclers, the processors, the power plant, the road construction, the NHAIs of the world, they have to accept this material which comes from the MRF. This is very important. These are some, I'm just sharing this as a gallery, which in 3 cities, there were some MRFs in Kochi, Port Blair, and Kanpur. So I'm not getting into the details.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dadlani, for an insightful and practical presentation. We will now open the floor for questions and discussions. Participants may kindly post their questions in the chat box. I will take them up one by one and invite Mr. Dadlani to respond. So the first question is, how much percent of incoming waste is recyclables, RDF, and inerts?
Sorry, Supreet, can you come again, please?
How much percent of incoming waste is recyclables, RDF, and inerts?
So there are no fixed norms for this, but the target is to reach, if it is segregated properly, uh, it can be, the recyclable material can, get up to can have a share of 60 to 70%. That is the target we should be working on. There are no fixed norms, but because the level of segregation varies from MRF to MRF, the incoming material. So it's very difficult to say, but it's like typically what I have seen from my personal, it varies from presently 25 to 40% of the recyclable. Then there is the RDF, which forms a major chunk, sometimes goes up to as high as 70 to 80% also, and then the rejects. But we should, if it is done properly, managed properly, complied with, especially with the new rules, we should get to a figure of 60-65% recyclable, saleable material, basically.
All right. The next question is SWM rules 2026 now mandate four-way segregation, but with limited infrastructure to actually process these four streams, are we setting up a system that is bound to fail? What is the way forward?
So my limited thing would be in this case that MRFs are going to play a more critical role because of the mandates which have been provided for the sanitary and the spatial waste. Yes, there is the infrastructure is lacking, but the very fact that it has been recently implemented, the rules have been recently implemented, and the cities are working on this. MoHUA is also providing all support. It's a question of time before the infrastructure and the facilities for these would also come up. But it is a good, I would say, such a good stage for MRF, especially with the bulk waste generators and the mandates or the regulations on the waste which goes to the landfill, the penalties, the monitoring, etc., the annual audits of pollution control board. So all this would add up as a positive for the MRFs at least.
So next question is pertaining to bulk waste generators. Bulk waste generator guidelines say 20,000 square meter or 400,000 liter water consumption
40,
or 100 kg or more waste produced. But more than 100 kg waste, is it mandatory to be bulk waste generators?
it is, they have to run. So all cities, they have a list of bulk waste generators. So we are working in other cities also for some other projects. So they have a defined list of bulk waste generators. This would include educational institutes, hostels, residential areas, especially the gated, complexes, etc. Large restaurants also. So the ULBs are mandated to provide, or it's mandatory for them to provide this information. They are clearly identified, the bulk waste generators.
So the next question is given the dismissal level of women's employment in the waste sector in general, it is important to try to understand why women's participation or employment in MRFs is much higher. What in an MRF is conducive to women's employment, and can this be replicated across other waste establishments?
Yes, I think that's a good question because I've seen it personally. Many MRFs, they're almost 40 to 50% women working, and they are really good, better than the men folk in, especially in sorting and segregations. The movement, the way when they are working on the conveyor, I've seen it personally. I mean, I'm just sharing my example and sharing my experience rather on this. So there is a good percentage of women working, at MRF level, and they also work, in other aspects as a waste collectors. Also, I've seen many. The percentage may be lower than MRF, but yes, they have a major role to play in this, and all the aspects, the safety, the social aspects, the wages to be paid to women, for example, it should not be less than them. So all these aspects have to be looked at, the social aspects, the safety protocols, they have to be followed.
Okay. So next question is, this is related to CTO. NOC for fire is not required for a 5 TPD MRF plan. Also, if you can provide the steps for getting CTE and CTO. And addition to this, there is another question that if we run the MRF less than 5 TPD, do we need CTO?
No, it's not required. Actually, the fire safety, of course, has to be, norms have to be followed. And even the demonstration projects where we had worked, they were proper fire safety. I have not included in the presentation, but there are, different protocols for fire safety, the kind of equipment to be used, because there are a lot of other things which I gave a slip to actually while presenting it. But there are protocols and which have to be followed. And for CTO, it's not a requirement, but if it is less than 5 TPD.
Okay. If an MRF is highly dependent on municipal funding for daily operation, for instance, ULBs in Odisha, can MRFs be ever financially viable as it is not really operating as a profit-making venture?
That's a point which I was emphasizing also in the viability financial. The sustainability is not complete without the financial viability. And that's very critical. And yes, that is true. Most of the MRFs have to be supported financially either by the ULB or through grants or some other, financial instruments. But in the times to come, we hope to build standalone MRFs which are financially viable, generating some money, if not earlier, but maybe attaining break-even point in third, fourth year of operation, and having a IRR of 7, 8, 9% at least. That kind of a system, basically, ideally. But yes, in the today's context, this is true that most of the MRFs are not financially viable because of different reasons. When they were planned, there was there was a commitment to provide them segregated waste, which did not happen for whatever reason. Some technical issues, lack of training, all these issues. So I'm not getting into the details, but yes, this is one major area or the scope for improvement in the MRF operations.
Next question is also related to financial stability. How can MRFs in India achieve financial stability under EPR, given that there are currently no viable markets or takers for low waste plastics and textile waste, which constitute a significant proportion of the dry waste stream?
That's a sad, reflection at the moment. Again, we have seen, there are units which are registered, for EPR, but they haven't generated a single EPR credits. So that is because again, because of different reasons, and the EPR, the value in rupees per kg, it's also fluctuating, and what they actually. So these are different issues, but all this would fall into place if the proper compliance and the protocols are followed. And yeah, so that could be it should change as we go along with the new rules and better compliance for the other regulatory aspects.
So next question is, can you mention some cities which have tipping fee for MRFs?
I won't be able to, maybe some of my colleagues, they may be able to, but the cities we worked in, there were no tipping fees, but it was, the agreement was that the ULB would, at the doorstep, they would deliver free of cost the segregated waste, dry waste. So tipping fees as such, in the cities we have worked in limited way, I haven't come across, but I'm sure there would be some models, Mr. Mamuja or other, Kuldeep or other experts, they may be able to. Mr. Khandelwal is also here, I think. They may be able to throw some light.
Right. Sir, during the presentation, it was mentioned in one of the slides that the total annual MRF expense is approximately 44 lakhs. and that it only includes MRF operations, excluding the cost of wet waste management?
No, so there are two things basically. There were two slides. One was the highlighting the project cost, which included the capex and some other things. When technically a project cost is defined as your capex plus amortization, margin money for working capital, etc. That is a project cost. But broadly, it is considered as a capex. That is one-time cost. The operational cost is that constitutes basically the wages and salaries, the utilities, including water, power, etc., maintenance, and then the depreciation, the interest cost if you borrowed some loans, term loans or working capital loans. So these are two different components. So break-even point is determined by both this, and so it depends on the break-even point is a. I'm just mentioning this because there are different ways to. First aim is to target is to achieve the break-even point in terms of, so there is a capacity and the time zone, I can't present it graphically, but those who understand, there's a fixed cost, there is a variable cost or the operational cost, and then the revenue generation. Some point in third year, fourth year, they'll match. That is the break-even point. So it will give you both the time, maybe third year, 3 months, 36 months or 39 months from now, or also in terms of the capacity. Let's say at 4.5 tons per day capacity, you are achieving that figure. So this is how it works basically. These are all assumptions, financial assumptions. Operationally, there could be other issues, new issues popping up all the time, but this is how it works.
Next question is, what skills should young environmental professionals develop if they want to contribute in designing and managing sustainable MRFs?
So designing is very critical, and so, there could be a requirement of young urban planners, for example, even architects, environmentalists, social scientists, which basically you have to look at the location in terms of its, the whether you have to avoid the sensitive zones, the water bodies, etc. All that is there in the environmental and social, considerations, but also the location in terms of the community, where it is going to be placed, it's going to be implemented. But more importantly, the layout plan. That's more important, in terms of how the material flow would happen. So that has to be designed scientifically. It should not happen that your storage material, there is a if there is a separate storage material which is furthest from the machine in which it has to be processed, for example. I'm giving a very basic, I don't have the diagram to show it, though we have worked on it, but these are the aspects. So designing the location, the designing, then the compliance, uh, all these are important. So everybody can play an important role. The young professionals, especially because there's a lot of learning and it's a new subject. So you can be innovative, you can contribute even more than people like us who have, possibly been more theoretical. But you can bring in innovative ideas. The entry and the exit may be different for the vehicles, for example, to make it more efficient, the timing of the vehicles to come and leave, the finished material, linkages, all these things basically has to be worked out. Optimal requirement, the inventory carrying capacity of that MRF for both the incoming storage, so the layout plan, all these important views. So the engineers, technicians, environmentalists, social scientists, all can play. Urban planners can play a very important role. Architects also.
So, what can be the solutions for operational challenges? Suppose there's labor shortage which leads to disruptions in daily operations.
Sorry, come again, Sukhpreet, please.
What can be the solution for operational challenges at MRF?
So I did mention in my last slide, the operational challenges are, one is the bad quality of material. Bad, I mean unsorted or semi-segregated, material coming in. So you require more extensive sorting, and there's more, lot of dust is there. So a lot of material which cannot be used, not recyclable, and possibly your, the equipment would have to work on it, the de-dusters and all that, basically. That is one. Other is your the lack of forward linkages. You are making the material, you are processing it also partly, but you are not able to sell it. There are no takers for it. So that is again, the backward linkages, as I mentioned, in terms of the quality of incoming material and the forward linkages. Third is the operation of the unit. So there is lack of training. So, for example, a private operator, which is a smaller agency, some agency which has taken on this mantle of running the MRF, right? They are good at their understanding the waste part of it and all that, but they haven't been trained. No, the capacity building hasn't happened. So, in operation of the unit on a daily basis, there could be some issues. There are seasonal aspects when there's a, like you mentioned earlier, that there could be the location of the MRF. There is a water logging I've seen at one MRF, in the monsoon season. So all these, there could be operational difficulties, waste not coming in, infrequent thing, then suddenly more waste coming in after Diwali. All those things put together, the backward linkages, forward linkages, and the operational aspects, the technical breakdown. The breakdown is not handled. It could be a remote area, and even if the equipment supplier would probably take days to reach there to sort it out or do the and preventive maintenance, lack of preventive maintenance because they don't have the budget. So many factors actually, but these are some of the operational difficulties.
Sir, we'll just take one last question. This is also related to sustainable operations of MRF. If segregated waste gets diverted to authorized aggregators and MRF is receiving less recyclables, how would operations be sustainable?
Yeah, can you just repeat it, Sukhneet? This first part I did not get.
If segregated waste gets diverted to authorized aggregators and MRF is receiving less recyclables, how would operations still be sustainable?
Yeah, that's again a very valid question. It keeps happening all the time. I mean, I won't use the word pilferage, but there is some valuable waste, plastic waste especially, and paper board, going through the informal waste because that getting diverted basically. Won't say I won't use that word, but there are diversion of this valuable waste. We should ideally come to a MRF because that is the infrastructure built to have the highest value creation or value addition to the dry waste. So this is a problem, but there is a proper mechanisms put into place by the ULP. This can be to a large extent. This can be rectified.
Right. As we come to the close of today's webinar, we would like to thank Dr. Debulina Kundu, Director NIUA, for her encouraging opening remarks and continued leadership in advancing knowledge sharing and capacity building initiatives. We would like to extend our sincere gratitude to Mr. Pradeep Dadlani for sharing his valuable insights and practical guidance on the sustainable operations of material recovery facilities. Our sincere thanks to all the participants for your active engagement and thoughtful questions. You may share your questions through email as well with us. We also acknowledge the support of Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, our program partners AFD, KFW and the European Union, and the entire Cities 2.0 and NIUA team for making this webinar possible. We hope today's deliberations will support cities in strengthening MRF operations and advancing resource recovery through sustainable and circular waste management practices. Thank you once again for joining us. Have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.